welcome to the presentation here. We appreciate you guys being here. I'm Dave Lowe. I'm the Director of Government Solutions. Is with me, I have James Becker, and he's the CEO, the illustrious, industrious CEO of 3QC out there on the West Coast, where it is like 6 million degrees, apparently.
Yeah, only going to be 108 today, but welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. I really appreciate it very much. Welcome to everybody with, especially with the VA and GSA Public Building Service. We appreciate you guys very much. We're glad to have you, as well as folks from NASA and NOAA and USDA, Air Force, and NAVFAC as well. So thank you very much for joining us. We're glad that you're here. And just a real quick disclaimer, this event is not affiliated or endorsed by any other agency and is provided to the audience for informational purposes only. And participation here is voluntary and it's not indication of an endorsement or a commitment to purchase from any vendor. So we just want to make sure you knew that as well. So real quick, you can download on the side here. If you open your panel on the side, you can download the notes for this process so that you can follow along and fill those in if you need to. And you can also open that panel and enter it for questions. So we'd love to have you to do that. And if you open that panel on the right-hand side, we'll be glad to incorporate anything that you would like us to do and provide you with an opportunity to communicate. So why are you here? Open that panel over there and tell us why you're here. We'll go through some of those in just a minute. And a little bit about 3QC. You go ahead and tell us a little bit about what makes 3QC tick out there in Folsom, California. James, go ahead.
Well, 3QC is a company of building experts, and really we've fashioned the company around a desire to make buildings work, to make buildings energy efficient, to meet the green goals. So we're focused on lead and commissioning only, and we've got a lead fellow on staff, which just means that he's one of the original greenies, and we've been in business for about 13 years now, and offices throughout California and Maryland, and we're a group of technical experts. So we're engineers and we're architects. And besides that, we have commissioning certifications as well. And really our desire is to know everything that it takes to build a building, to design a building, to build a building, and to operate a building, so that then we can help the project teams be successful in their creation of new buildings.
Awesome, super. So real quick, why are you guys here? We're gonna kick off a real quick poll and ask this question so that you can tell us and let us know if you're here to say, hey, what in the world is all this whole building commissioning, and how does third-party commissioning affect the construction schedule? That's a great question. And why separate contracts are important. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And how can I verify the commissioning agents have the right qualifications in order to be able to facilitate what you're trying to accomplish, which is a healthy building, right? So let us know what it is that you're after, and we'll be glad to be able to incorporate that into the process. And we'll give you just another quick minute to be able to do that, a couple more seconds. Well, very good. I do appreciate all that feedback, and I'm going to share those results with you. And 30, it's a third, and third. So there you go. What is whole building commissioning? How does third-party commissioning affect the schedule, and how can I verify agents? Very good. I appreciate that. So real quick, we'll get into the next part. This would be the best webinar ever. Dale says, if we had a primer overview to read or keep, yep, we'll get you one of those. In fact, after this, we will provide you with a follow-up email with all the information, including the presentation and a link to be able to see the recording. If you're able to learn how the commissioning is important to a design-build project, absolutely, we'll talk about that specifically. In fact, Brian, a way to estimate approximate cost of third-party commissioning over a range of building complexities. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. Rex, this will be the first experience with a new building, and I need to understand the requirements. Super, Rex. We appreciate you you being here and checking it out. There's also a good discussion for prefabricated buildings. We're probably not going to go into that, Bill, but if we need to talk about that online or offline, we can take care of that as well. Roy, I won't know until after the briefing. I love it. Andrew, if I obtained a better knowledge of the building commissioning process, fantastic. Hopefully we'll be able to meet that goal for you. That's part of the biggest thing of what we're doing here. And Ashley, the information is presented in a clear, concise manner. I hope so. And Deborah, sample or template documents used in contracting production setting are supplied. Yes, technical evaluations will supply you with some of the things, and we'll point to some of the RFPs that are out there for whole building commissioning as well as retro. We'll give you some ideas on that. An elevator version can be a key takeaway. Dalia, hopefully we do meet those requirements and are able to provide you with that. So absolutely want to make sure that we do our best to do those things. And then we're also going to talk about the objectives here for this webinar. And this is really designed to provide you with an overview of the federal initiatives, the things that are coming down on your head. What is the whole building commissioning process? We'll give you an overview of that. Why a separate contract is important for being able to secure what it is that you're looking to do, as well as some of the costs associated with commissioning overall and some of the benefits of those as a result of that. And biggest thing for a lot of folks here is just risk mitigation so that you can avoid the gotchas and be able to provide you with some insight there. Way back in April of 2005, 10 years ago, GSA put out a building commissioning guide, and that's kind of where all this started to germinate and kind of grow out of. And in January 2006, there was a government-wide memorandum of understanding for the new generation of buildings, the buildings that are going to be green kind and all the rest of the pieces there, and then the complexities of the buildings as they're improving these buildings, they're getting more and more complex and tying in together. So those are the things that are laid out in some of the pieces here with this government-wide memorandum and the design principles, and commissioning is included in that, as well as being able to measure and verify that your building is being built the way that you want it built and it's doing what it's supposed to do. So in January 2007, a lot of folks know about 13423, and in October 2009, just about everybody knows about Executive Order 13514, which addressed the environmental goals and getting into LEED certification. Go ahead.
Well, and I just wanted to add here, Dave, that really the reason that this is coming down from the DOE is there's a recognition that we're using too much energy, and the consumption of energy then drives greenhouse gases, and so how do we cut back? And since buildings use so much of our energy, it's been estimated that 60+% of the energy that we use in this country is in our buildings. How do we attack that? And so using commissioning or building experts to help us tune our buildings is one of the ways that we're attacking our excessive energy use.
Absolutely, and within that, the government, different agencies, specifically even the VA, has two different manuals. One is the whole building manual process for commissioning, and the other is the retro commissioning process manual, and both of those are they're kind of leading the way on what's happening out in the marketplace and some of these things that are happening and coming down on the folks with these initiatives, and to the point where the VA CFM, the Construction Facilities Management Division, that's for the capital projects mostly, but not just exclusively, are requiring separate contracts for commissioning, and we're going to talk a lot about why that is and why it's important to you. Some of the common definitions, run through these with us, James, so that we know what we're talking about here.
All right, so we're going to introduce several new terms to you, but it's really not that confusing. Of course, commissioning is too long of a word, so we shorten it to CX. And then we attach extra letters. So we have a CxA, which is the commissioning agent or the commissioning authority, the person that is responsible for the commissioning effort. And then 3PCX would be the third-party commissioning, and this is your independent commissioning agent. The OPR, this is the owner's project requirements, and this document really tells the design team what are the key design elements that we need to account for in this building. Why are we building this building? And then the BOD is the basis of design, and this is prepared by the engineer and engineers and the architect to describe how they're going, what systems they're going to use, and how they're going to design the building to meet the OPR. And then FTP is a functional test plan, and this is developed by the commissioning agent to test the building systems and to make sure that they're tuned appropriately before you get the keys to the building.
Right on. And tell us something about there's 3 primary commissioning types that we're talking about here. What are those?
Yeah, so there's various types of commissioning, but the most common are the lead commissioning, and this is by the U.S. Green Building Council, and you get a certificate if you meet the objectives. And lead is primarily focused on the energy using equipment in the building. And so MEP systems, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and renewable energy systems. And then we also talk in the industry about whole building commissioning, and LEED is beginning to adopt some credits for this as well, but we're now going to include the building enclosure. And it's estimated that 30% of the energy that we use in our buildings escapes through the enclosure, which is doors, windows, roof, and so how do we control that? And then also we're throwing in the network and the low voltage systems in the building. Those need to be commissioned as well. And then we can talk about retro commissioning, and retro just means to go backwards or to look backwards. So when we're commissioning an existing building and bringing it back to the standards of where it should be operating to, or we're changing the occupancy and adjusting it, we call that retro commissioning of an existing building. So if we're looking at this process, the commissioning process really begins in the pre-design phase. And it has to begin early because there's some questions we have to answer early. Moving into the design, and then from design into construction, and then near the end of construction we talk about an acceptance phase where the architect is doing his punch list and we're doing our building testing and we're training the operations and maintenance personnel. And then occupancy, where you get the keys to the building. And so there's now what we're also beginning to see is over the first year of the building's life was we're beginning to measure the energy usage and measure how the systems are operating and verify that they're meeting the design intent. And there's a whole list of commissioning activities that we do to ensure that the building is tuned and operates correctly. So going back to the pre-design phase, we want to have a goals workshop, and we want to work with the occupants of the building or the owner's reps, and we want to develop what the owner's project requirements for that building are. And oftentimes a lot of this information is in the architectural program that the architect develops, and so this would be in conjunction with the development of that. But we're gonna also ask some sustainability goals and some energy goals and maintenance goals and things like this that maybe aren't normally in an architectural program. So that's the owner's project requirements, and then we're going to review the basis of design, which is how that the architect and engineers tell us that they're going to meet the design requirements. and then we're going to develop a commissioning plan. And this commissioning plan is similar to this presentation that we're giving, but it's identifying to the team their roles and responsibilities and making the building function. During the design phase, we're going to do design review. We're going to create some commissioning specifications to make sure that the contractor is aware of his requirements contractually to make the building work. We're going to do some more design review at the construction document phase. And really what we're looking at as building experts is we're asking the question, can this design be built? And can and should the contractor understand how it's supposed to operate? And so looking at sequences of operations and some of those single line diagrams that get buried at the back of the mechanical or the electrical plans, making sure that those are communicate how the building is supposed to operate so the contractor can actually build it. As we get into construction, we're going to review submittals, making sure the contractor is providing the design intent equipment. We're going to be making site visits, doing inspections to check on the installation of equipment. And we're going to be providing the contractor with some checklists so that he makes sure that he finishes the installation. And then we're going to do some equipment testing to make sure that each piece of equipment is operating on its own. And then as we get into acceptance right at the end of construction, then we're going to be testing the buildings as a whole and the systems as a whole. So if we have daylight sensors and we're using natural light in the building, we're going to want to make sure that the daylighting controls are operating correctly. And we're going to make sure that the building management system is controlling the building equipment. And we're going to test through the different modes of operation. What happens when it's very cold outside or very humid, or what are the energy saving features? We're going to test all those to make sure that the system operates the way it was designed and intended. Then we're going to train the maintenance and operations personnel on how the system works and why it works the way it does so that they can fix it. And we're going to provide them with not only a commissioning report, but a systems manual that talks about how the systems were designed, why they were designed, and it has a checklist there that you can go and troubleshoot and then readjust the set points back to where they were so that the building operates correctly. Of course, in hotter or very hot or cold climates, we're going to want to test in the opposite season so that the building is tuned in both the hot and cold extremes. And then walking the building through the warranty phase right before the warranty expires to make sure that the contractor is held accountable for any little things that are still nagging at the end there. So this process spans the whole of design through construction, and this is a design bid build approach, but if we were to merge the design and the construction activities together, we would still use the same process. Our communication would be a little bit different with the team, but it's the same process. And this process is our 3QC best practice, but really it's taken from the ASHRAE Guideline 0, which is the godfather of commissioning standards, and it's been adopted by the VA and GSA in their commissioning manuals, and maybe we've added a few little twists, but it's the same process.
What I do like, James, is that the bottom part of this is where our involvement, if you take a look at these graphs at the bottom, these are kind of our involvement, or the involvement actually of the commissioning agent and the level of that involvement. And obviously when you get closer to the acceptance of the building before occupancy, that's where some of the things kick in, and traditionally where commissioning agents have been up until recently. And the challenge being is that, talk a little bit about that, why it's so important to be involved early in the process so that the right things happen through the process.
Well, so we need to begin with the end in mind. And you'll notice that the functional testing, the blue bar underneath there, is the tallest bar because we're involved with the contractor testing all the equipment. However, in order to really provide the value that you want from your commissioning agent and to get the payback that we're going to talk about shortly, is we need to be involved in the design, and we need to make sure that the designer completes all of his design and his sequence of operations and tells the contractor what the initial set point should be and how things are supposed to operate so that the contractor can build it right the first time. And this is really going to eliminate rework, RFIs, change orders, and schedule delay, because the contractor, if he can do it right the first time, saving time and money saves the whole team time and money.
And that's the key, is making sure that the project goes the way that it's supposed to go, and that you get what you're supposed to get, and the design is done from design on through. There are so many difficulties that can happen in a given building, and the reason why certain things don't happen. And one of the key reasons, it could be in the design, it could be in the installation, or it could be in the settings. Or it could even be that it was something that was respec'd because of a piece of equipment that is no longer available. So those are the types of things that, when you look at it from a high-level overview and having the expertise across all of these specific stovepipes, if you will, that somebody can see and act on your behalf. That is really the critical piece that we're talking about here. And a couple of reasons why, answering that question, why are we even talking about commissioning? First of all, the capital projects require it. LEED requires it. If you want LEED certification, you have to have commissioning. Overall, we're looking to and trying to get to the place of those energy savings and reducing those emissions. But the building really needs to operate properly, and that the people that are in there are comfortable and deal with all the different complex systems. Talk a little bit about the complex systems, James, because this is really why it appears that the government is leaning towards what's happening and incorporating us as commissioning agents into the construction process so deeply now.
Well, so as we attempt to balance all these requirements in our buildings, energy savings and comfort level of people and the quality of the air in the building, and we're attempting to control humidity. We're starting to control all of these systems using computer systems over the building network. And so it's becoming so specialized in each of these stovepipes or silos, and the communication between the silos is becoming more and more difficult. So it's not only your design sub-consultants that are becoming more specialized, but your subcontractors are becoming more specialized. And so understanding how everything fits together, it really ought to be the general contractor's job. But remember, he's trying to make a buck, and he's got to get in and get out as quick as he can. And so really the commissioning agent is there. He understands all these systems, or he should. And so he's looking at the quality. Do they function? And how do I help the contractor make them function correctly?
Critical, and ultimately your satisfaction as the owners of the buildings and reduced downtime of those facilities is really what we're after. We're after helping you get to the place where those buildings are operating the way that they're supposed to. So definitely. So let's talk about some specific components. Let me get this working again. I'm not sure why this is not happening. Did I bypass something here? Oh, we did it. So real quick, separate contracts are kind of what is funneling down through several different agencies right now. There are going to be agency requirements for separate contracts, and we're kind of encouraging early separate contracts in the design, pre-design phases, so that at the end of the day, we're not trying to fix something that was a design problem through change orders, right? So that's the objective overall. So the biggest piece for separate contracts is we as third-party commissioning agents, and by definition, we're third-party as opposed to, even if we're sub to the construction management or the AE firm, whatever it happens to be, but it eliminates the potential conflicts of interest because the CM or the construction folks cannot, or the engineering folks, they can't fire the commissioning agent if it's a separate contract. Where we report directly to you, to looking out for your best interest, it puts you in control of from pre-design all the way through occupancy and being able to make sure that the people that are in that building are happy. And it gives us the ability to act on your behalf as a true agent and expert on your behalf. So ultimately, this empowers you as the owner. It minimizes the delays, and it minimizes, very importantly for the contracting folks here, it minimizes the change orders throughout the process. Anything else you want to add to that, James?
Well, just the importance of being independent is it's my job to look at the design with a critical eye, and to ask questions if I don't understand it. And if I work for the design team, at some point they can just tell me, "Shut up, James," without answering the question. And projects tend to be schedule driven and budget driven. And so if I'm asking quality questions, unfortunately that tends to fall off the list. If I'm working for the contractor and he doesn't really want to make it work because he wants to get out of there, he doesn't want to spend the extra time, he can tell me, "Sorry, James, be quiet." So me being independent allows me to raise the questions, and you know what? If the agency decides that the questions I'm asking aren't really that important, they can tell me to be quiet, but it's their building and it's their choice, and that's what it should be because they're paying for it.
Exactly. And that is what is so critically important. So in addition to some of these things, the foundation for a lot of this, there's been several different surveys, but one that has been quoted a lot in this is the Berkeley Lab study. Tell us a little bit about this survey and what are the implications of this and what this whole graph thing means.
Okay, so Lawrence Berkeley National Lab has done a couple of studies, and so this one is showing the benefits of using commissioning, and you've got purple bars that are existing buildings, so that would be the retro commissioning process, and then you've got the lighter purple bars, that's new construction, or it would be lead commissioning or whole building commissioning, and so if we highlight here, we just focus on a couple of these. So change orders. We're showing a significant benefit that commissioning provides to the reduction in change orders. In fact, on new buildings, it's 100% of the time. Then we can go down to thermal comfort, and we're seeing almost 80% of the time, owners are recognizing that their people are happier when they did commissioning. And then another one is equipment life. Is if we make sure that the equipment is tuned to operate correctly, the equipment will last longer. If we make sure that we educate the operation personnel on how to maintain the equipment and operate the equipment lasts longer. And these are all key components of commissioning. Another study that was done by Berkeley Lab indicated that 40% of new buildings had HVAC problems. 33%
this is brand new buildings, right? Brand new.
Existing new buildings that were just built that should have been operating perfectly. 40% of them had problems. 33% had sensor problems and were non-functional, and 15% had missing specified equipment.
That's just fantastic.
How do we have such big numbers? And we have another chart coming up here that will show you. but also in '98, the Naval Facilities Command, which is building facilities all around the world, noticed that new buildings had significant problems, and heating and cooling topped the list. That's that building comfort issue. Why do new buildings have this? There is no reason for it. Well, it's because we're getting complicated. And as we begin to control things using computers, it becomes a black box. How does it operate? What are the set points? Who knows? And we don't even know that it's not operating until somebody complains. Well, that's too late in our opinion. So some of the common project challenges that commissioning helps address is the design review process. When are the drawings ready? When can the contractor actually build it without a bunch of RFIs and subsequent change orders? Project communication. How do we communicate, and when do we bring up quality issues? And then that works down into the scheduling delay. If we're able to identify the key decisions that need to be made early in the project, and a lot of that has to do with equipment, I can tell you from experience, and then also getting permanent power. Addressing some of these key challenges as a commissioning agent, we can help expedite the schedule. Moving on, system readiness in construction is, when are systems ready? When is the building ready? The subcontractors are going to tell you that they're done. The general contractor typically relies on the word of his subcontractors. He doesn't go and check it himself to make sure that all the control systems are operating. So there's a potential for what we see in this chart here. And the chart is, when are all the systems in a new building fully functional? And so that first little 7% is more than 12 months after occupancy. It takes that long. The green is 33%. It took 6 months to get the building to work. And then the blue, the biggest one, 40%. And see, it's indicating that only 20% really work at occupancy, and that's ridiculous. So the commissioning agent's job is to identify what makes the building work at occupancy. You've bought a brand new building. When you buy a brand new car, you don't expect it to need to be tuned immediately. It's the same thing with the building. You ought to get a fully functional building. That's our job as commissioning agents.
Absolutely. That's absolutely right. So we'll talk a little bit about the costs associated with this. Well, obviously it depends on the scope of work and the size of the project, for sure, and the number of systems that are need to be commissioned in the process, and the complexity thereof. Some of the other pieces that are happening here, if you're bearing the cost of commissioning in a contract that's under the GC or the CM or the AE, you're also paying additional overhead on that. It's just buried, right? Because it's going to be put in there. And what is the cost overall? For this, the cost range is anywhere from 0.5% to 1% of the total construction cost. Now, depends on the size of the project, right? So the larger it is, actually our price goes down in perspective of the building. In most instances, you get some of the complex healthcare components that need some specialized attention. That's a little bit different. But overall, the biggest thing is, and this is where the rubber's hitting the road, and being able to say, what is it really worth it? And the fact is, yes, because for every dollar that's spent, it's worth $4 in change orders, and not even including downtime, by the way. And downtime can be enormous for some of these facilities, because it could be mission critical, could be healthcare oriented, all those. And this isn't from us, by the way. This is from the VA's manual, and I just want to point that out, that those are the types of things that we're looking at as far as the cost, but ultimately the payback on those costs being well worth it. Go ahead, James, real quick.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that that really we're the tip of the tail of the dog in terms of what it's costing on this project. And so since we don't cost that much, and since you're getting $4 back for every dollar you spend on us, you really need to choose your commissioning agent based on their qualifications. The better that they communicate, the better that they understand the scope of work, the designer's job, the contractor's job, the better they're going to be at helping save the project dollars, real dollars. And so I'm really advocating here, choose them based on qualifications and on references. Don't try to save a couple of bucks. A couple of percent of a 1% of a project is not worth your time.
Absolutely. And that's critical, is that the real cost savings happen as a result of the commissioning and qualified commissioning, as opposed to the LPTA, going through lowest price technically acceptable with this can cost you a lot more money for having this. So real quick, questions. We do have some questions, and I'll read these out real quick. We're kind of running out of time, so we'll do this as quick as we can. Can you get a copy of the slides? Yes, you will get a copy of the slides, and it will be recorded, as is being recorded right at this moment. And my experience is difficult to determine when a lead firm really understands commissioning. Can you explain the levels and the importance of a lead fellow on staff? Because we happen to have one of those, and we let folks know about that. So real quick, James, tell us the importance of commissioning for lead. Because actually, the next question is commissioning required for lead? So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, so the lead system is a green rating system from the U.S. Green Building Council, and you get points for doing energy saving and sustainable tasks. And as it evolves, similarly to the code, as the code evolves, things become more complicated and complex. And so having somebody who really understands the lead process on staff is important, and so we've got a lead fellow on staff, which means he's one of the early greenies, and he's been along through all the evolution of lead, and so that helps to keep the team on focus of getting the sustainable and the energy criteria completed, and then LEED does require commissioning as well. The Green Building Council has recognized, in order to reduce energy, our building systems have to function efficiently. They have to be tuned, and the commissioning agent is the guy who makes sure, or the gal that makes sure, that the systems have been fully commissioned and are efficient.
Excellent. That's great, and it is required by LEED, as you mentioned. Okay, could commissioning be helpful in a complex system such as wastewater and/or central treatment plants? And the answer to that is yes. We don't focus on those, but that is an area where it can apply.
Wherever, Dave, wherever we have a control system, and so on wastewater there is a SCADA control system that tells the pumps when to come on and controls the equipment. So similarly to your building management system or your lighting control system or your fire alarm system, wherever you have a control system, somebody who knows about it has to test it besides the contractor to make sure it works.
True enough. And the process is the same, or at least the best practices is in pre-design all the way through. It makes sense for across the board as a process to be able to incorporate that. So here's another question for us. Where is it? Are there mandatory requirements for using third-party commissioning agents, size, type, and when do they need to be separate? I'll take the first part of that, and that is, one, Congress mandates it for over $10 million. That's the first thing for any of the capital construction projects. Some of the VA CFM and VA is requiring separate contracts for and those are generally, not always exclusively, but generally the capital projects. And then finally, it just depends on the agency initiatives. We see this as kind of moving. As you know, it just moves slowly, as you know, just the amount of time that it takes to be able to have things happen. So we're kind of up against it at the moment. So I'm gonna kind of, if you have any additional questions, you can pop them in, and we'll be glad to answer your questions as well. But those will get you started as far as that goes. But we'll incorporate this into the follow-up and make sure that you have those as well. So real quick, avoiding the gotchas. First, engage your commissioning agents early, preferably in pre-design, and you may have to push for that, by the way. You may have to push to get commissioning agents involved beforehand. In California, they're not pushing anymore because in order to be able to pull a permit, you have to have a commissioning agent involved, right? Right, James?
That's right.
Yeah, so that's one piece. Separate contract, absolutely a great idea because it helps remove potential conflicts of interest. It minimizes your delays and it minimizes your paperwork, especially when it comes to change orders and the like for that. Maximizing your control over the whole piece. Really, the benefits of commissioning are very clear. It's a higher quality of your finished product, making sure that it's built the way that you want it built, and it's doing what it's supposed to do. Fewer change orders, fewer contractor callbacks. Nobody wants to deal with those. Lowering your energy bill, ultimately gearing up and meeting those green initiatives that have been out there for several years now, right? It's been over a decade. Better trained staff so that the folks that are running the building know what they're doing, which drives down the operational costs, and ultimately with your occupant satisfaction is the key. And when we did this originally, we actually did this presentation originally for the VA back in Atlanta for folks in procurement because we're reinforcing that this process is good. Why? Because ultimately for them, and what I love about it is it's better service for the vets because the building is working and you're not having to deal with some of the issues. And we've seen some outrageously incredible issues that happen within VA facilities because of just the where you guys are in the age of the buildings and things like that. So it's people wanting to do good things, but being able to take this to the next level. So we really appreciate you guys very much. Real quick on how you can buy from us, O3 Fact, some of the things happen through facilities contracts. We can help there. 871 is our other contract where we can incorporate that into a BPA for you and your organization so that it doesn't have to keep going out over and over. And session follow-up will be a copy of the presentation, links to the manuals that I mentioned earlier and that we've been covering, kind of peppering throughout this. Some of the federal memoranda that came down either from the president or through other organizations. A copy of the questions and answers will take a couple days for us to compile, but we'll do those, as well as sample requirements, which folks have asked us for as well. And we really appreciate you joining us and just can't thank you enough for spending some of your day with us. Hopefully this was helpful in helping you get an understanding of what's happening out there in the marketplace and how this can help you build your buildings better. James, you got any parting comments?
Just that I'd be willing to field questions. You've got my number there, my email. If you're stuck working on an RFP or something like that and need some technical insight, I'd be happy to do that for you.
Yep, and we do that on a regular basis. There's been some questions about sample scopes of work and some of the specs that are involved for being able to identify those. In fact, there's a couple of additional questions about some projects that we can use as examples. We'll go through those in just a minute, but we want to be conscious of your time. We're actually over, so I apologize for that. I got started a couple seconds late, so that hurt us in the beginning. But we really appreciate you guys being here. We're going to jump into some samples of what we've done, as well as some of the qualifications. In fact, we're going to address the qualifications first, if that's okay with you, James, about what does it take to find a qualified commissioning agent so that you can get what you're supposed to get at the end of the day.
All right, so you're looking for somebody with preferably a long background and experience in both the design and the construction process. Remember that you're really looking for a building expert who understands the pitfalls, the challenges, and the common struggles that the design team is going to face and that the construction team is going to face, so that he or she can ask questions about that early and jump those hurdles early. Remember, one of the biggest values that we're going to provide you is we're going to help your designer be successful, and we're going to help your contractor be successful. And by those two parties being successful, then you will be successful, the building will be successful. I mean, we all succeed together. You want somebody who has MEP knowledge, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and the control systems, because that's one of the biggest challenges on a project. A broad knowledge of building systems. So if we're talking about building enclosures, and how do we commission that, or fire alarm systems. If you're going for lead, you want an understanding of lead. Key, very key. And there's an organization called the Building Commissioning Association, the bca.org, and they have a list of key attributes that you would want in a commissioning agent. And then finally, I'm going to emphasize again the ability to communicate, because you know us engineers, is we can be as smart as we think we are, but if we can't communicate to the rest of the team in a way that they can understand, then we're not useful. So we have to communicate and help everybody succeed.
I think that's really critical, is the communication components, and real the bullet, second to last bullet with the Building Commissioning Association. You can incorporate, and they are incorporating some of those into the RFPs now. But what's very difficult is the ability for you to be able to determine if somebody can communicate. How can you tell that somebody can actually bridge the gap? Because ultimately, there's going to be finger pointing. In just about every project, somebody's going to point a finger to somebody else, and who can bridge the gap and has the communication skills to be able to pull that back together, get everything back on track, get the pieces together the way that you want them done, and then get that process moving forward again. That's some of the pieces. It's very difficult to be able to get in black and white in an RFP, and that's why it's very important to look at the certifications are very important, because that'll show you somebody that has those. But the past performance on some of the things, we're going to talk about a couple of pretty complicated projects that we're able to reel in, and one of those being the VA housing and care facilities out in Reading, which not a small project, right? Not a small project, right, James?
No, a couple of large projects, health care facility, housing units for the VA here in California. And what was unique is it was a campus setting with different levels of care facilities, but it was all fed, heated, and cooled from a central plant. And so complicated on how do you set up this plant so that it's energy efficient and yet provides all the level of care that that you need. So it was these facilities were also LEED Gold, so a high level of indoor air quality and energy efficiency as well, and then just integrating all of your communication systems and your nurse call, your fire alarm, your security over the network. This is one of the challenges in whole building commissioning as well.
Another area where we did it was Martin Luther King Medical Center. Another large project where you can see very complicated, especially when you're in the medical world, to be able to pull these things together. Similar to some of the other pieces, not a campus setting. This was more of a vertical setting, but lighting controls. You mentioned that earlier, James. Is that now with that's part of what comes with LEED certification and all the pieces that are associated with making that building work and in a green environment, right?
That's right. And again, being team players, one of the big success stories that we had on this is there were so many different submittals on different types of equipment and systems. And we made the commitment as team players to review those submittals within 5 days. And so by us reviewing the submittals so quickly, it really helped the design team keep up to speed with their submittals, because once they got the answer from us, sometimes they could use that to do their own review quicker. But it allowed the contractor to keep moving and to keep his date and make the project successful.
And that's the ultimate goal, is keeping it on time, on schedule, on budget, and having the building be the way that you want it to be at the end of the day is what it's all about. One more piece that we did. If you think it's bad dealing with doctors, if you think that's challenging, let's talk about dealing with judges. Tell us a little bit about what's happening in California with some of the court systems and things like that. That's a big revamp of what's happening in California. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so the California court system is spending $6 billion to redo the court system.
That's a B, folks.
Yeah, and so high security, high levels of communication. And they're doing LEED, and we're monitoring the buildings for energy usage, which is measurement and verification, M&V. So multiple projects and just a high level of complexity. And so working with them and helping the contractors manage their schedule. Helping contractors understand the critical nature of getting their individual pieces of equipment working first, and then their systems, and keeping tabs on the subcontractor so that the general contractor can control the schedule and be successful. That's part of being a successful commissioning agent.
And some of these are happening more in a retro type of an environment where you're revamping floors at a time, and they have to keep everybody happy too. So there's a lot
Right.
There's a lot involved in commissioning. We appreciate the fact that we were able to help you out, hopefully a little bit with what's happening here in the market and what you're up against. We'll continue to keep you apprised of the initiatives that are coming down. We'll make sure that you get a revamp of all this here. We just really enjoyed the fact that you were here today. If you have any additional questions, here's our email and our phone numbers. Feel free to reach out anytime. We'll be glad to help you out any way we can. And we are watching for the RFPs and RFQs that are coming out. And we're looking forward to making sure that you get what you need to help get your buildings done. So again, we appreciate you being here. And James, you want to say any last parting comments?
No, just emphasizing that we're here to help if you've got some questions.
Super.
Thanks for attending.
Super. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of this fine last day of June as we jump into the craziness of fiscal year end in this last quarter. So really appreciate you guys. Thank you for joining us.